Can you just touch on what some of the challenges are that await the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There is some challenging times ahead. You know, there's a lot of people out there at the minute just trying to navigate the way through, if you like, this competence. It's new to them. I think the biggest thing for me will be the implementation. What does that mean? I think because we've got a lot of changes with regards to competence, the problem you've got is the law. And the law literally says if you're not competent, you must be working towards. If we make new competency frameworks, which are getting developed as we speak, how are we going to implement them? That must be the biggest challenge, that we face now, that we don't place people in legal jeopardy. All of a sudden, I think a lot of the safety officers have got an upfront role to play, like the supervisors. But the safety officers are often used to walking around sites, doing safety audits, looking at the working environment for trip hazards and signs, making sure the workforce has got PPE on. They might look at the documentation, the safe systems of work that we've got and the RAM set. But competence isn't there. The whole job could go great. Yeah. Competence is in basically the CVs. And so the safety officers now are faced with looking at a selection of cards, a CV. They've got to look at the standards of the job. And they've got to look at legislation and see gaps. And that's a different skill set for the health and safety officer. And that's what we've tried to do with some of the companies, clients we work with. We tried to encourage them to develop internal committees. So we call them, and sort of cradle like this, Competence for Compliance Committee, to encourage the health and safety officers working within the companies to then form an internal competence and compliance committee, and then invite people like myself along and have an agenda so they can start looking at the hazard that they don't normally see. In the 80s, people hanging upside down on jobs, they could see it. Before the management regs in 99, we could see that we needed permits and whatnot. But the hazard now is not easily seen.
Yeah, can you just expand on that a bit more? So what can companies do to meet these changes?
Yeah, first of all, we're instructed, certainly in the 𝗖ście𝗺�57 and in the building regs, to seek professional skills. We're instructed that you're not going to know every single thing there is. Certainly some of the tier ones, they've got 1,000 people on a site. They're not going to know the competence for every single trade. So we're basically directed to go and seek help, like people like myself. Remember that some of these companies are experts at what they do. Yeah, they're technically brilliant at what they do. Some of them have got great systems in place. But as I said before, they might have been installing a system and a component for many years brilliantly, and all of a sudden someone brings a license to do that. And in particular, my sector, ventilation, where we haven't got any traditional apprenticeship routes. We've got people that's been upskilled who don't necessarily have the knowledge. So as I say, we try to encourage our clients to have basically start off with a company competence for compliance committee that starts to address competence. What is it? And what we try to get them to do is do a skills diagnostic on their workforce. The standards for that, by the way. So the CLD, LD standards are...
So is that like creating a bit of a matrix for your organisation in terms of where competency starts and stops?
Training matrix is great. So basically there's a national occupational standards for the identification of the needs of an individual and a collective group. A method statement is a good place to start. A lot of companies have got method statements. There's a sequential of what we do, how we do the job. And ultimately then try and create that committee where we're looking at the CVs, the training matrices. And then if you're not sure, bring someone in and say, listen, basically, can you look at our training matrix? I do a lot of analysis. That's what I do a lot of, where I'll basically look at the training matrix. I'll look at everyone's CVs. I'll look at the working practice, but I'll look at the law. And then basically I'll try and come up and plug those gaps. What we also do, we try to encourage some of the main supervisors to be part of the process of any upskilling. They're experts at what they do. They know the workforce. A bit like, how can they be part of the process then of competence? It's a bit like giving our sons and daughters maybe a driving lesson. What's the difference between giving them a driving license? So we introduce the supervisors, if you like, to be part of what's called an expert witness program, and then part of the assessors program. We do a lot of that on the nuclear sector, which is difficult to get into certain buildings. So there is support, there is help out there, and I would encourage any company to basically create that internal group and committee. They'll have one anyway, but it's just an extra arm, open an agenda. I sit on several. I get invited, and to support.